Hello and welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are around the world. Wednesday, light 'em up Wednesday, time for another inspiring light 'em up lounge with very special guests, special topics regarding the premium cigar industry. And today is one of these special days when we have a guest who will truly broaden our horizon and give us an opportunity to look at the premium cigar world with a different set of eyes, with a different perspective, because of this gentleman's incredible background and experience in various different industries. But we'll get to that in just a second. As always, you know the spiel. Here at the Light 'em Up Lounge, it's all about the community, it's all about the camaraderie, and we love to hear your questions. So when you're watching over on Facebook, please make sure to put your questions underneath the live stream into the comments. For all of you here at the lounge, please make yourselves heard. And without further ado, it is my pleasure, privilege, and honor to welcome Dr. Rod Kurthy, joining us from early morning, sunny California. Rod, what a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for joining us at the Light 'em Up Lounge.
I've been really looking forward to this. I'm sure we're going to have some fun here.
Most certainly. Now, Rod, let's dive right into it. You're a world famous dentist, a scientist. You have been one of the most impactful people in research and development when it comes to dentistry, medical science, research and development. And you're also an avid cigar lover. And today we would love to learn a little more about how these worlds can come together and create something entirely new, interesting, and meaningful for the avid cigar lover. But let's go right back to the drawing board. Perfect Cigar Solutions, the company that you have founded, which is offering an incredible array of cigar accessories, is something that you created purely for fun.
Yes.
How is it different when you start a business solely for the fun of it and without the immediate need for economical success, or with a different mindset? Do you think it sort of frees up the creative energy and gives you a whole new perspective and opportunity to create something that's probably even more meaningful then?
No, not really. Creativeness or coming up with an idea really doesn't have to do with much in the way of external things going on. But here's where it does make a difference. When I was pushed and shoved into starting this company, I had already been a very successful dentist for decades, and I at that time and still own what is considered the premier professional tooth whitening company in the world. So finances were not a concern at all to me. For the average person wanting to start a company, they're not in such a lucky situation, and because it costs a lot of money to start a company. It's way more than most people would even dream of. And so there are many people who have great ideas, but they don't have the resources to do anything about it. And because they don't have a track record, they don't have investors willing to put up any money whatsoever. They've never done it before, and so they don't know what to do. And I mean, once you've done it, well, now you know how to do it. And boom, and if you have the money, you can do it. But for the average person, it's really tough. And I'll tell you, when I first started my dental company, gosh, I had a full-time practice, and I had a lot of research development I was doing. I was lecturing all over the world. I was authoring articles all the time. I had published 5 books. So my plate was way more than full. And just through a series of events, at that time, I just had thousands and thousands of dentist followers because, as you can imagine, when you're considered a celebrity or a key opinion leader or whatever, there are people coming to you, wanting to throw money at you to endorse their products and things like that. And in truth, that's pretty much what happens in all industries, including dentistry. But I had the luxury of being very successful financially at that time. And I didn't care to have someone tell me what I can say or what I should say or whatever. So I'm a big ham. I love to get up in front of audiences of 3,500 or 4,000 dentists. I just love it, that type of thing. So I had a lot of fun. So I wrote articles, I lectured, etc. And it was always what came from here. I never accepted a penny from any company. So what I said is what I believed. So I might tout some products from a certain company, and I might say negative things about other products by the same company. Don't use these. And so the great thing was that dentists, when they tried what I said, when they followed my instructions, it always worked. They always, because it was real. And so when you find someone who gives you suggestions and wow, those suggestions make everything better, you keep coming back and you want more from that person. And so that's what happened. And so by the time I had published my book on my tooth whitening particular procedure, keeping in mind that most dentists around the world consider me to be the leading tooth whitening scientist in the world. My first study was back in 1977. So I've been at it longer than anybody else on the planet. So dentists started coming to me by the hundreds, and especially on the main, we have a dental forum, an international dental forum, where we have, right around 1 million subscribers. Wow. And at right now, depending upon where, we have a lot of them from the United States. And so right now you have tens of thousands of dentists talking to each other. And I was one of the founders of that back in 1999. So through that, dentists were driving me crazy to start my own company. And through a series of events, I just had no other alternative. And my wife had been pushing me because dentists were driving her crazy about it, calling my office many times a day, etc. So I decided to start a company, and I was a dentist. That was it. I had no training in business. My dad was an auto mechanic working for a Buick agency. So I didn't come from a family that knew anything about business. So it was quite an ordeal getting that business started. Luckily, it caught on immediately and skyrocketed right through the recession. For instance, we started taking orders. The first day we opened to take orders, and I had announced what day it would be because everybody kept asking me. We went into back order on day 1, on the very first day. But that was September of 2007. And then the Great Recession hit in December of 2007, but yet we just skyrocketed right through it. So by the time I thought about, by the time I was kind of pushed to open a company to provide what now we call the perfect draw and the perfect repair, my plate was just incredibly full. And so I gave it a week, to think about it when 2 particular people really pushed me, and I decided to go ahead and do it. So, luckily I knew how to start a company. I already had a huge facility. I already, for my dental company, I already had marketing department and, administration and legal and sales and warehousing and all that type of thing I already had. So it did cost me about $250,000 to get to the point where we actually launched products. But again, it was just, took some time, but it was very smooth. I can't imagine having done that if I didn't have the finances to do it or the knowledge to do it. So I feel badly for all those people out there that have great ideas but don't know what to do with them. If they did, oh my God, the world would be a much different place right now.
That's an excellent point. I'm curious. I know quite many people that who from an early age, they when they turn 5, 6, 7 years old, they know, and they probably ultimately retire as a doctor. Whereas in today's day and age, so many young people, even later on in life, they probably don't know where they want to go. They're probably lacking a bit of perspective or the vision and the entrepreneurial spirit to just venture out and make your dreams come to life. How is it for you in the early days? Was dentistry something you knew you just had to do, or you always wanted to do that, and then ultimately there you were a few years later, successful with your business and dreaming about new and other projects?
No, not at all. The mere fact that I ended up as a dentist is nothing short of a miracle. When I was 5 years old, I had major surgery, and I'm going to be 72 in a couple days. So back in those days, when I was 5 years old, we didn't have children's hospital and that type of thing, and parents couldn't stay with the children. There was visiting hours, and that was it. And so it was a very scary thing for me at 5 years old. And I got stuck with needles up one side and down the other. And back then, needles weren't sharp like they are now. They were, very uncomfortable. And so then I got infected after that surgery, had to go back in the hospital. So I kept getting stuck with needles. I became the biggest needle phobic you can imagine. And where's the scariest place to get a needle? In your mouth. So going to the dentist, my whole life was a panic attack. And, but through a series of events, so I love the life sciences. That's just right up my alley. I come from a family of people who are very talented with their hands. And so through a series of events, I ended up deciding I wanted to go to dental school. But I didn't know whether I'd ever be able to give someone an injection without fainting myself. And so when I told my family that I had decided to try and get into dental school, oh man, the laughter, you can't even believe it. Everyone thought it was a scream that I, the biggest dental phobic on the planet, would think about being a dentist. And in fact, when I first started dental school, in the very first week, we had to start observing different procedures. Even though we didn't know anything about dentistry, they made us do that. And so the very first day, I was observing someone doing a procedure on the gums. And when they gave the patient the injection, the next thing I knew, I woke up in the recovery room because I had fainted, boom, right down on the floor. And so I didn't know whether I would be able to do it, but I got used to it. And as it turned out, I was made to be a dentist. That's just who I am. My talents were just exactly what they needed to be. And I think that my own experiences gave me a lot more compassion for my patients. And so that has a lot to do with all the research and development that I have done since 1976 to try and make things easier and better for patients.
When you look at the cigar industry with your fresh set of eyes, and I say this humbly, and please don't get me wrong, but from the outside looking in, not as a classical cigar industry operator, be it manufacturer, retailer, somewhere in the distribution end or in the tobacco side of things. What is your perspective on the industry looking from the outside in? What was appealing for you about that very particular ecosystem? What is it that kept you coming back?
Cigars?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, the funny thing is that I was a cigarette smoker when I was very young. And it was very difficult to stop smoking. And I stopped smoking in 1976. And so, of course, I didn't want my children starting to smoke with friends and things like that. So my kids knew that I was not in favor of that. So one time, and it was in, 2003, I was lecturing at a large dental meeting, and it was at Lake Las Vegas. So in Las Vegas, there's a sub-community called Lake Las Vegas with a very large lake. And at one end of it, there's a beautiful area with hotels and shops and things like that. And so the meeting that I was speaking at was at the Ritz-Carlton, and I was speaking for 3 days. So at the end of the meeting, my wife had made reservations, so we went walking toward the restaurant, and we were walking through all these shops. And so my wife, it was Christmas was coming up, and so we started talking about, well, what are we getting our son and daughter? Well, here's the problem. My son is a very simple guy. There's nothing that he wants. So it's very difficult to shop for someone like that. Now, my daughter, on the other hand, she wants everything. There's nothing she doesn't want. So she's very simple. So my wife said, well, I've gotten this, that, and the other for our daughter. But for Chad, our son, I've only gotten him a humidor. I said, humidor? What are you talking about? The only humidor that I have ever heard of is for cigars. And she said, well, yeah. And I said, Chad smokes cigars? And she said, yeah, he does. I said, well, how come I don't know? And she said, well, he was afraid you would disapprove, so he didn't want to tell you. And I said, no, I said, cigar smoking and cigarette smoking are two different things. And from my knowledge of the medical effects, cigar smoking, is much more benign. And so anyway, we ended up going into, there was a cigar shop there. So we went in there and we bought some things for my son for Christmas. So then the following night, after I lectured all day, we again were going to a different restaurant, but we passed the same cigar shop. And so my wife looked at me and she said, wouldn't it be funny if you and I went in there and smoked a cigar and we called the kids and said, guess what we're doing? And I looked at her and I said, you really want to do that? And she looked at me and she said, well, do you? And I said, okay. So that was it. We went in and we each got a cigar. No idea what to smoke. The fella, we told him we had never had cigars. So he picked out cigars for us and we sat there having cigars. And I got hooked. I loved it. And my father and I never got along. We just never, ever got along. If I said white, he said black. And so in particular, I always wanted to maintain a very, very close relationship with my kids. So I started having cigars with my son, and gosh, you would just really enjoyed it. And that's how I happened to get into cigar smoking. And I just, I love it. I just think it is a wonderful thing. One of my best memories is that shortly after having started smoking cigars, I was in Europe lecturing for 3 months, and I was going all around. And our base was in London at the Landmark Hotel, and then I would fly from there different places. And my wife was with me, my son Chad, and our daughter was with us. And so one day I had flown over to Ireland and lectured all day. Then there was a problem. Then I was going to lecture the following day again in London. And on the plane home, there was a delay. My flight was delayed for about 4 hours. So on the way back, based on that day's lecture, I knew there were some changes I needed to make or wanted to make in the lecture for the following day. So I needed to do a lot of work. And when I got to the hotel, it was past midnight. So I didn't want to go up in the room and start working and wake, up my wife. So they set me up in the restaurant there. I hadn't had dinner. They made me some dinner. And anyway, I said, when I finish dinner, is there somewhere I can go smoke a cigar? And they said, well, the place is empty. You can have a cigar right here. And so they had a cigar lounge. And so they went and opened that up and got me a cigar and brought a cigar. And so for about 2 hours after eating, I sat there with no one around inside their huge restaurant, smoking a cigar and working on my PowerPoint. And I have to tell you, that was one of the most memorable things that ever happened to me in my life. I felt so wonderful. And so now, every single time I have a cigar, and that was back in 2005, I think. Every time I have a cigar, I think about that. And it puts me in the same relaxed mood. I come out here, and everybody, please excuse the fact that I'm in my garage, where if anybody has ever watched any of the videos on our website, you see me sitting in our backyard. Well, the backyard is now demolished because we're doing a room extension, a room addition out in the back, a large one, but there won't be any walls. There will be walls that come down automatically, but it'll be open with a fireplace. And so I'll be able to go out there and smoke cigars whenever, regardless of weather or anything like that. And we're redoing everything. So there's no way my wife is going to let me have a cigar in the house. So I'm out in my garage right now. So this is just my temporary digs for having a cigar.
Rod, at what moment in time did the idea come to life that cigars are not just something that you would enjoy at your own leisure, but where you truly understood with your experience in problem solving, with your ingenuity and your efforts to improve other people's lives? When did you apply all of that to the world of cigars in order to create the framework and sort of the nucleus for Perfect Cigar Solution?
Well, I've been a research and development scientist, like I say, since 1976. And so it has just become my nature that if I find a problem, I without even thinking, I try and come up with a solution. And the only field that I've done anything with that is dentistry. And so I've created a multitude of different things in dentistry. There's no dentist in any first or second world country that's not using several things that I have created. So that's just my nature. And one of my favorite cigars, this baby right here, the Cuban Monte Cristo #2. But as you can see, I only like to cut a little bit off. If I'm going to smoke a tapered cigar, I want it tapered. I don't want to cut that whole taper off. Otherwise, I would buy a different cigar. And so I would cut just a little bit off like that. And then especially with those Monte #2s, it was like ceramic. You couldn't get any air through there at all. So I cut a little bit more off. Try it again. Cut a little bit more. Now, finally, I've gotten to the point where I can get some draw, but the taper is almost always gone. And now the wrapper starts to unravel. So it was very, very frustrating for me. I tried all kinds of pokers, but pokers don't work because they're just like an ice pick, and you shove it in there into something that's already tight. You shove it in and it expands it, and it more times than not, it cracks the wrapper. But even if it doesn't, you pull it out, it just closes again. And so one time it just occurred to me, well, why don't I buy a poker and then reconfigure the tip myself? So I did. And what I did is, if this is the poker, and here's the tip of it, I made cuts like this, and then put an instrument and bent it outward so that I had these little barbs, the actual like little cutting blades sticking out the side, where I would go in and pull it out, and it would actually grab onto some tobacco and pull it out, so that I could insert it, pull out some tobacco, check the draw, go deeper, do whatever I needed to do. Also, at the same time, because I had the problem with the unraveling so often, and it was always frustrating for me if there was a crack in a wrapper or something like that, I created the Perfect Reserve, or the Perfect Repair. And basically all that is distilled water and one of the same organic adhesives or glues that is commonly used in fabricating cigars. But I didn't want just a glue, because if you do have a crack or a hole or whatever, you want to be able to plug that. So I wanted to give it some substance in there so that it could actually cover a crack. And so I came up with the idea of using food grade cellulose fibers, because tobacco leaves are right around 15% cellulose. All plants are structurally made of cellulose. Wood that we burn in our fireplace, or that holds up a tree, that's almost solid cellulose. But any plants, so tobacco leaves, in fact, tobacco is a type of a crop sometimes that they grow to harvest cellulose from. And so when we're smoking cigars, we're already smoking cellulose. So I selected cellulose fibers that are anywhere from 1 to 2 microns in diameter and about 90 microns in length. So when you shake those up, they crisscross and they form like a scab or a covering. So anyway, I came up with those two things just for my own use. And when I would have smoking, pleasures with other friends and oftentimes family, they would see these two things sitting out there and say, "Oh, Rod, what's that?" And I would explain, "Well, can I use that?" So they'd use it on their cigars. And then when they needed to, they'd use the glue. And they started pushing me. They saying, "Why don't you start a company so that other people can buy this?" And people were asking me to make them what is now the Perfect Draw. Well, my plate was already so full, I barely had time to sleep. And so I didn't have the several hours to make each of them one of those. And one day, we do a lot of, in my companies, we do a lot of shipping with FedEx. Almost all of our shipping is second day FedEx shipping. So, we spend millions every year to FedEx. So they're always wanting to take me out to lunch and things like that. They know I don't go out to dinner because I'm at home, by then with family. But so they'll say, hey, let's go out to lunch and then we'll have a cigar, because both of my reps love cigars. And they each smoked cigars occasionally, but 10 years ago or more, when they met me, they started smoking. So now they're both avid cigar smokers. And the first thing that they would do is ask me for that, perfect draw thing, and they'd use it. And every time we get together, they'd say, why don't you start something? So this one time, Mark, one of the reps, just really got on me. And he says, you already have everything you need for a company. Just start me. So I said, I'll tell you what, Mark, I promise you. Now, I've given this a lot of thought about doing it, but I've never done it just because I'm already so busy. But I will give it thought and I'll let you know in a week. So I did, and I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So that's how this whole thing started. And it just started with the perfect draw and perfect repair. And I did it just for fun. It ended up costing me $250,000, but it's still, it was something I did for fun. So we put up a website. That's it. No marketing, no nothing. And I figured, at some point in time, people will stumble across my website, and if they want to buy, fine. A couple of weeks went by, and we didn't even sell anything. Nobody knew about us. So then people started stumbling on us and talking about it on cigar forums, and so our sales started going up. And then I don't know if you're familiar with Rush Limbaugh, but he was a conservative talk show host who passed away, I don't know, a year or two ago. But he was an avid cigar smoker. And I never had time to watch him, so I didn't know. But my friend sent me a link to one of his shows and gave me the time codes. And he had a caller that called in who said, hey, Rush, I'm a novice cigar. I'm a new cigar smoker. So, do you have any tips for me? And he said, well, for us cigar smokers, one of the biggest things is the draw. He says, if I buy cigars by the box and I routinely throw away 25% of them because I would give myself a hernia to try and smoke through there. And so I thought, 25%, well, this guy's really sensitive to the draw. And so I decided to send him the perfect draw. Now, at the time, he had over 10 million paid subscribers, plus the tens of millions of unpaid, people who watched it. And so I didn't think he would ever get it, but I sent him a perfect draw. And I sent it FedEx so that I would know when it arrived, fully not expecting that he would ever receive it. 2 days later, I'm sitting in my backyard, smoking a cigar, working on my computer, and my director of operations calls. And she said, guess what? She said, someone just called and told us that Rush Limbaugh is talking about the perfect draw. And I'm hearing this ding, ding, ding in the background. I said, Lisa, what is that dinging? And she says, well, I have the, our back end page for the website set so that every time there's a sale, it makes a ding noise. And it's going ding, ding. We sold a perfect draw for the following 24 hours, every 15 seconds. And so that was the start. And that's how people really started finding out about it. But it was funny because he talked for a full 2.5 minutes. I timed it, and just going on and on and on about the perfect draw and what it does. So that's when everything hit the fan. And then sometime after that, Reinhold from the Cigar Journal sent me an email, and he said, "Hey, you were nominated for the best accessory award, and now you've been voted into the top 5. So we're going to invite you to Germany." I said, "I didn't even know we were nominated. I've never heard of the cigar trophy." Because remember, I love cigars, but I'm not in the cigar industry. I'm in the dental industry, so I don't know all the inside workings and all the people, in the industry. And so I said, "Well, okay, that sounds like fun." And my wife and I flew to Dortmund, Germany, and son of a gun, when they announced the 5 nominees, we won. And so I got up on stage to give the little acceptance talk, and there were 300 people. It's an invitation-only event. And so all of the most famous people in the cigar industry were there. I was just amazed. I was in awe. And I just kept looking around and seeing all these faces that I'd seen in the cigar journals and on everything else I'd seen. And like I say, I lecture a lot regarding dentistry, and there's nothing I'm more relaxed at or having fun at than speaking to 3,500 or 4,000 dentists in an audience. You just can't shut me up. But now I'm up on stage with my wife in front of 300 of the most recognized people in the cigar industry, and I was freaked out. I was just absolutely beside myself. And when I told the story about how I am considered the leading teeth whitening scientist in the world, you can't imagine the laughing from the audience. They just broke up. And here's what's funny is in general, cigar manufacturers and many cigar shops and things like that, they have a great aversion to the perfect draw. They don't like it, because if they were to say they like it, they've told me that's the same thing as admitting that some of the cigars they sell have a tight draw. So they don't like that at all. So when it was announced that I was the winner, or the perfect draw was the winner, silence in the audience. They gasped. It's like, oh. And so when I went on stage and I explained that indeed people initially buy the perfect draw to fix plugged or extremely tight cigars, but I then explained that just like eating steaks, people have like their steaks cooked a certain way. I personally like mine medium rare plus. And if it's a little bit overcooked or a little bit undercooked from there, I'm okay with that. But if it's still bloody, or if it's well done, I'm going to send it back. I'm not going to eat that. But we've never been able to do that with cigars. And everybody, without even realizing it, has their own preference. Everybody listening, I'm sure that every once in a while you cut a cigar and you start smoking it and you go, "Oh, what a great draw." You just found your own idea of a perfect draw. And some people like a little more resistance. Some people like a little bit less resistance. So from the feedback we get, people that own the perfect draw end up using it 90 or 95% of the time to take what is otherwise an acceptable draw to create what their own, what a great draw, perfect draw. And so when I explained that to them, then everybody stood up and applauded. Then it was okay. So that was quite an experience. And I think the highlight of the evening is when Carlos Fuente Jr., Carlito, came up and congratulated me and gave me a hug and welcomed me to the cigar industry. One of the most memorable things that's ever happened to me, because I think he has been a huge positive influence on the industry. But of course, I don't know the industry like anybody else watching, I'm sure.
I couldn't agree more. But what's very interesting, Rod, is um, obviously with your experience, with your track record, with all the accolades that you had received as a dentist and scientist. When you say you felt intimidated by going up on stage in front of like the industry giants and the icons of the premium cigar world, why was it, or why did the cigar industry feel different compared to the world that you were used to?
Well, I've been considered what we call in dentistry, we call a KOL, which means key opinion leader. So for decades. So I've been one of the most prolific research and development scientists in the industry. And so many thousands of dentists, throughout the United States, at least, knew my name. And because of that, I ended up getting to know and with many becoming friends with pretty much all of the well-known dentists and company owners and things like that, because I had companies contacting me all the time asking for advice on certain things. So pretty much dentists, well, that's what I am. I'm a dentist. So the regular dentists in my audience, they were just my colleagues. And all the well-known people, well, most of them were my friends. So getting up in front of an audience like that is very, very simple and a lot of fun. But knowing very little about the cigar industry, very little about it, other than I know I like to smoke cigars. And getting up and seeing all these celebrities. Imagine if you got up in front of a bunch of movie stars, like you had a room of 300 of the most famous movie stars and singers and things like that. You'd be intimidated. Well, that's how I felt. I was not familiar with the industry. I was getting up on stage saying, "Oh gosh, I didn't expect to win. What the heck am I going to say up there?" And I hope I don't say the wrong thing, because I don't know what's taboo and what's not, in the cigar industry. So yeah, it was fun, and I didn't stammer or anything like that, but I felt, I don't know if intimidated is the right word, but just in awe that I should be on stage in front of all these super important people in the cigar industry. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
No, I fully get that. I truly understand. What I'm curious about, though, is how do you see the cigar industry being different, and what is it, with all your business experience, with the medical track record, what's different about the world of cigars? Is it the community? Is it that sense of working with Mother Nature? What was it that you felt was so appealing?
The cigar industry is so different from the dental industry, because in the dental industry, you have dentists that are just everyday dentists and on forums and things like that. Then you have the dentists who are famous, and I don't know why so many people, when they become well known, something happens to their personality and they become jerks. And then you have the industry, the corporate industry. And I'm talking about major corporations, the Danaher Corporation, which is, what are they? Maybe possibly the largest corporation in the world, but they own everything. They have businesses in dentistry. So you have all this corporate world. And so among the corporate world, you have so much competition. And on the face, it might look like it's friendly competition, but it's not. It is deadly competition. And with the cigar industry, what I was so amazed at was within the corporate end of that, the companies that make the cigars or anything else, camaraderie, and not just lip service, but genuine camaraderie. I spoke to so many leaders or owners of rather new cigar companies that would talk about how the leaders like Carlito Fuentes and all the other ones, how they would freely give their time, help them, even work with them, etc., for virtually nothing in return. Absolutely fantastic. The corporate entity feeling in the cigar industry is like no other that I personally have experienced. Everyone genuinely cares about each other. Everyone is out to help each other. I'm sure there are exceptions to that because we're all humans. But this is what I see in general. Whereas in the corporate world of dentistry, one corporation does something that pisses off a different corporation, they're going to find themselves in court. I'm aware of many, many of those types of things. So it was such a pleasure to attend that meeting and the trade show there in Germany, and talk to people and hear this and learn this about the industry. I loved everything about the industry before that. And let me give you an example, even as far as just the individual cigar smokers. And I'm sure everyone who's watching that's outside the US, I imagine it's the same way in other countries. But here in the US, if I were to go somewhere, maybe down by the beach or whatever, and find a short brick wall to sit on and have a cigar, as people walk by, I'm going to have cigar smokers stop and talk to me. They're going to say, "Oh, what are you smoking?" Etc. I don't know why, but people involved in cigar smoking, whether it's cigar smokers, cigar shops, corporate industry, are so friendly. It just amazes me. So oftentimes they'll be walking by or sometimes I'll do the same thing. I'll be walking by someone smoking a cigar and I'll say, "Hey, hi, how you doing? What are you smoking?" etc. And then they'll say, "Hey, I've got an extra cigar. You want one?" Who does that? Cigar smokers. That's who does that. So, yeah, even though this company is more my hobby than anything else, I have so much fun with any dealings that I have with anybody in the cigar industry. I'm so happy that I did start the company.
Beautiful. And I truly hope, and I think that even our show is a testament to that, the community aspect and the camaraderie. And
Yes.
Just the sheer fact that we have so many friends and fellows joining us today, manufacturers watching, like Dr. Gabby Caffey, who sends his regards to you, and he told us on the chat on Facebook that he loves the Perfect Draw. And I just got off the phone with Claudio Scroy before we started the show, and all these people were full of praise and very happy to hear that you would come on the show. It's every single week we experience that. It's people coming together, and there's something unique about the cigar that creates just that sense of unity and community, and that's what we all, I think, love and appreciate about the premium cigar industry. Beautiful.
Well, just one of the things that I have found, in addition to what I just explained, if I am somewhere and I'm sitting next to people, most of the time we're not talking. If we do, it's minimal. But when I go to a cigar shop and I'm having a cigar and someone comes and sits in the seat next to me, you start a conversation. You get into just amazing conversations. And what is it about that? In fact, I really do enjoy smoking cigars, but the main enjoyment is when I can have a cigar with other people. It's like a connection. It's like you have other people around you, and that cigar, for some reason, facilitates the ease of discussion and the enjoyment of discussion. I think I enjoy that more than the cigar itself. So I'm curious to know, anybody watching have, right now, anybody have an idea why that is with cigars, smoking, the industry, why everyone is just so darn friendly? Is there a reason for that? Nobody? I'm sure everybody agrees, though.
That's for sure. Well, whoever wants to speak up, I'd be curious to hear your opinion. Well, how about we ask Oleg? And first of all, let me send my very, very best wishes and spirits to Oleg because it's his birthday today. So from
Happy
all
birthday.
of us here at the Light 'em Up family, Oleg, welcome, salute, and cheers to your birthday. Happy birthday, brother.
Thank you, my brother. I'm still alive. Sorry for I didn't was involved last week. Unfortunately, you know the situation in Ukraine is unprognosable, and but really I'm still alive, and even I have a very nice glass for gift for my birthday. It's a glass from Vienna, Sophenwald. Maybe you know this one, Reinhard.
Great choice.
One of the expensive, even expensive glasses in the world, like if 50 euros per one glass, but it's very light and really delicious with smoke of the Balvenie 12. It's amazing. Thank you for my birthday. Unfortunately, you not come to Cigar Lounge International this morning, but I understand it. For Roger, I think you'll do the great job, really great job.
Thank you.
Concerning the perfect draw, what I'm really want to say, in our cigar lounge in Ukraine, in Dnipro, we also have a perfect draw, but this fortunately we use only for call it friendly, we call it friendly Cuban faggots who smokes only Cuban cigars. Because perfect draw obligatory use when you smoke Cuban cigars. They are so expensive and they need a perfect draw, and it's exactly. Unfortunately, that's true because I almost never ever met Nicaraguan, Dominican, or premium Honduran cigars with the best the worst draw. So only Cuban cigars, even premium one, um, has a bad draw. So you need to cut them and make this. And I always told that if you don't want to buy perfect draw for 35 $40, you just need to take the good premium Nicaraguan or another premium cigars, but not Cuban. I love Cuban cigars. Definitely, this is a big problem because of they have a still communistic system, and they have a lot of unmatured tobacco, and even matured but very wet tobacco. And when and this is a problem to make a perfect draw. And also the second problem when we have different countries with a different humidity. And for example, in one country, the humidity will be very high. Like, for example, there's a fun story when I spoke with the Habanos officials, when I asked him why you use humidors in Cuba, and they told me that in humidors they draw cigars because the humidity of Cuba is very high, and in humidors they will draw the cigars. So that's a real problem for Cuban cigars and even for Cuba, or the same in the Dominican Republic. I was last spring in Egypt, in Sharm el Sheikh, and there was like 85% of humidity. So it was really dramatically smoke cigars there. But for drinks, the spirit drinks was amazing, because all spirit drinks, especially old one, like 20, 30 years old, I bring with me abroad with me, they are open so widely, and that's why of the climate. So definitely your tool is very useful. Unfortunately, or fortunately, in some countries where there very high humidity, it's like a must-have thing. My thing, must-have too. But I think we just the first rule, we need to choose the right cigar for the right place. So I will not talk a lot because of my birthday, and let's make the toast. Cheers, my friends. I'm glad to hear and saw you. Unfortunately, in that not easy time, we will survive. I hope I will survive. I will meet my family in Croatia. They're in the very good condition with Marko Bilic. Even my daughter, they are prepared the special cake, chocolate cake with 38 numbers, and the big piece of this cake was a cigar, chocolate cigar, and before my wife could make a photo of this cake, my 3 years old daughter, she knows about the cigars well. She steal this cigar and eat it because she actually thought that she smokes this cigar, because I have a magnet from Cuba with the Coiba cigar, and she always take this and smoke. And I said, "What are you doing?" "I'm smoking the cigar." So she's a very brilliant, and I hope she'll be a great aficionado. So cheers, my dear friends.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much, Roger and friends.
Brian, welcome, brother. Over to you.
Good afternoon. Oleg, happy birthday. I'm 38 as well. Cheers, my friend. I wanted to speak on this 2 weeks ago when you were here and you were talking about the situation, and I was on the verge of tears, and everyone was saying to pray, and I'm not a religious man, but I prayed anyway, and I just it was a tricky moment because of course we're celebrating 2 years Light 'em Up, and it's always a difficult thing to have celebrations when things are difficult in parts of the world, and I think we struck a good balance. But I watch auto racing, and they had the drivers, when they win the race, they pull up and they get on top of the car, they cheer and they celebrate, everyone goes crazy. And this Finnish driver won the race, and he got out, and they're like, "You're gonna get on the hood?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "I'm happy we won, it feels good, congratulations, but now's not the time. I'm not gonna get on the car and celebrate." with what's
Thank
going
you
on.
so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. No tears. No tears.
No,
Just more. Just more javelins. Just
Well,
more
yeah.
javelins, and there will be no tears.
And now we get to celebrate your birthday, so that's even better. But I want to do this tradition I've done on the call before, if we can. When someone in my life passes, we have a tradition. Me and my wife we take a sip in their honor and we pour one out. So if you will, I didn't want to do this 2 weeks ago. I didn't want to ruin Mr. Merrifeld's nice upholstery, but pour one out for anyone who's given their lives, in this big mess. Cheers.
Cheers.
And I wanted to give my thoughts on the cigar community since you asked. My only thoughts about why it's so amazing could be one thought is, cigars are very relaxing in nature and you do get a little buzz, and it's different than booze because it doesn't feel like an upper. It feels like relaxing. Similar to, I think, the way weed smokers don't get into fights much because they're pretty mellowed out. But that's just, I think, on the chemical side. For me, I think the only other, connection I can make with a metaphor in life for the camaraderie is hacky sack. So bear with me. When I was younger, I used to play a lot of hacky sack, and you bring one with you and you go to the fair and you go to the beach and you start playing with your friends. Does everyone know what hacky sack is? Google it if not. So pretty soon what happens is, before you know it, people are coming around. Like you're saying, people come up and talk to you about your cigars. Strangers, people from all different walks of life, suddenly you have a giant circle of hacky sack players. And it's the thing that we have in common. We probably don't have much else in common necessarily. I think if I really got into it with plenty of the people on Cigar Carls, maybe we would disagree on a lot of things, but we have this one thing in common, and it's something that we can agree on, and it's bonding us together, like hacky sack. Brian out.
Okay.
Very true, Brian. Great comment. Rod, on the other hand, do you think that with how the Perfect Draw, how Perfect Repair, and all your products and services that you brought to the cigar industry, how they work, do you think you had just a different spin on things and a different audience because you were not from the industry per se, but you had so many other connections, be it in the medical field or other people that you knew were into cigars, but coming from a different professional background. Do you think that was beneficial to the evolution of Perfect Cigar Solution?
Oh, I'm sure it was. From a very technical standpoint, these things are bad for you. Driving a car can be bad for you. Flying on a plane can be bad for you. So you can't say that there's no risks at all. Tobacco is a carcinogen. And even if you're not inhaling it into your lungs, you're getting some. You're getting the tobacco in your mouth. So as a doctor of the mouth, there's a little bit of pull there. And so one of the first things my wife said to me, she said, if you're going to start smoking cigars, you better not tell anybody in the dental industry about that, because they'll all hate you. They'll all, lose confidence in you and everything. And I said, yeah, whatever. So for years, when I would go to lecture, fly somewhere to lecture, I would bring a whole bunch of cigars with me. And at the end of the lecture, and many times they were multiple day lectures, where I'd be lecturing for 8 hours a day for 2 or 3 days. Excuse me. And I would say, by the way, everybody, I said, we're all dentists here, but I don't know about you guys, but I love cigars. So tonight after dinner, right out there on the patio, I'm going to be having a cigar. Hey, anybody who wants to join me, come on. I brought a lot of cigars with me. And always I'd end up with 15, 20 or so dentists having a cigar with me. So I'm not the only one. And although, the you're going to have fewer cigar smokers in the medical and dental industries than you will in just average. But still, a lot of them like that. Now, as far as what helped me get to opening that company, well, I have an educational background in mechanical engineering. And even though I never worked as an engineer, I have that. I think I mentioned before that my dad was an auto mechanic my whole life. And so in our household, there was no such thing as bringing in someone to fix the washing machine or the TV or whatever. We did everything. So I was brought up very, very mechanically. And then having gone into research and development back in 1976 and always thinking about how to fix something when I encounter a problem, I think all of that came together. And when I found this problem specifically with this Cuban Monte Cristo #2 that I smoke so frequently, I just came up with the solution, and it was only for myself. But, so I never had an idea of opening a business, and it was just because I was pushed to. But yeah, so some of that background definitely had something to do with me getting involved in that.
Speaking a little bit about your dentistry background, we had an interesting question from Svetlana watching on Facebook as to what do you think is the best toothpaste or the best treatment for your teeth when you're a cigar smoker? And let me maybe widen the question a little bit as to, let's start at the beginning. Can you clarify a little bit the immediate impact of cigar smoking on your teeth? And then secondly, what is the best way to deal with it?
Okay, so cigar smoking will have an effect potentially on the teeth and a different effect on the gums. So they're two very different things. Cigar smoking will not damage your teeth in the least. Cigarette smoking will not damage your teeth in the least, other than stain buildup. The tars in a cigar are adhesive in nature. They're sticky. And so you can build up that. And then when you have this little bit of stickiness, there is color in that material. But also because it's kind of sticky, it will also absorb colors from anything else you eat or drink. Now that is what we call extrinsic stain. It's on the surface of the tooth structure. But what happens then is that those colorants, those molecules will start to soak into the tooth structure. Once it gets into the tooth structure, we call that intrinsic stain. You can't get rid of that. So when it's extrinsic, you can go to the dentist, they can do a cleaning, it's all gone. But anything that has moved into the enamel cannot be removed by a cleaning. Certainly tooth whitening will help whiten and reverse that process. Now, it's interesting that you mention a particular toothpaste, because this is something that is kind of a pet topic of mine. Toothpaste should do a few different things. They should, in my opinion, provide some fluoride. And I know there are many people who are in the quote holistic crowd, which I totally disagree with. I don't look at holistic or non-holistic. The only thing I look at is what's good for you and what's not, because there are natural things that are very bad for you, and there's natural things that are very good for you. There are synthetic things that are very bad for you, and there are synthetic things that are very good for you. So what I dislike is people that get get on one side and they're holistic. Well, those people know nothing about science because it's either good for you or it's bad for you. And many, many things, including what I'll be talking about, is natural, holistic. But so anyway, fluoride in excess, yes, it's not a good thing. And people will talk about, oh, fluorides can be used in rat poisoning. Well, yeah, at huge, huge concentrations, but there are many things that are good for us in small concentrations that would kill us in large concentrations. So a little bit of fluoride, what it does for the teeth is that the hydroxyapatite molecule, the OH group, the hydroxy group, can get knocked off and a fluoride ion hooked onto it. This changes nothing about the function of the molecule, but what it does do is change the pH, the acid level at which the tooth will start to dissolve and create a cavity. So hydroxyapatite will start to dissolve at a pH of 5.5. But fluorapatite, enamel that has fluoride attached instead of a hydroxyl group, it will not dissolve until it's at a pH of 4.5. What's the difference between 5.5 and 4.5? It's a 10-fold difference. So the acid has to be 10 times stronger to dissolve fluoridated tooth structure than non-fluoridated tooth structure. So it is a huge benefit to the world. Because in first world countries, sure, you can go to the dentist. Nobody likes going to the dentist. Nobody likes getting a shot, getting their teeth drilled on. But you can do that. In many parts of the world, they don't have that option. And in many parts of the world, their diets tend to cause a lot of cavities. So anyway, this fluoride, and as a dentist, fluoridated teeth could tend to put me out of business. but we dentists, that's what we want. So a good fluoride for me is important. Then you have the fact that you want the stain to be removed. Well, now I won't even talk about the plaque or the bacteria because it's the toothbrush bristle that does that. If you want to just remove the bacteria off of your teeth, you could brush with water. It's the bristles that do that. So the other thing that toothpaste does is, of course, it can freshen your breath, lasts for a few minutes, but it can remove stain. Now, you can remove stain using abrasives, like sanding off the stain, or you can use chemicals to dissolve it. And a good example would be, let's say you had a car. It was a brand new car with a beautiful paint job, and now it's time to wash the car. The car has gotten dirty. And you have two choices. You could use a soft sponge, and you could dip that in soapy water, and you could clean your car. Or you could use a firm sponge and dip it in soapy water and rub your car. Now, theoretically, if you use a firm sponge instead of a soft one, maybe after you wash your car 1,000 times, it might have some minor negative effect on the paint. But let's say you even take a soft sponge, but you put a kitchen cleanser on it, the abrasive type of kitchen sink cleanser. Well, you put that on your soft sponge, and you're going to scratch that paint instantly. You're going to ruin it. And so I like to think the same way with toothpaste. I'm not a fan of highly abrasive toothpaste because they cause problems for the teeth. Many of you may be able to feel in your mouth up near the gum line and feel a little ledge of your tooth. If you have that, that's from toothbrush abrasion. And people don't like that. I don't like it. That's something that in dentistry we repair not too infrequently. So I would rather have a toothpaste with very little to no abrasive and remove it chemically, just like soap would chemically remove the grime off of your car. Now, the ingredient that works best for that comes from the papaya fruit. It's called papain. And papain is what's called a proteolytic enzyme, which means an enzyme that eats away proteins. But it not only eats away proteins, but anything organic. So when you have papain, which is a natural ingredient, and you add that in, it will dissolve away the stains with no negative impact to your teeth at all. So years ago, a company called Denmat in the dental industry, they came out with this Rembrandt toothpaste because at the time we were doing bonding on teeth with resin. This was before porcelains were used for veneers. And when you would use toothpaste on that, you take this nice, beautiful, shiny surface, and it would now be dull, and nobody wants to smile with dull teeth. So they came out, because they were in the industry of providing these resins, they came out with this toothpaste that was very low in abrasion, but had papain in it, which they called, their proprietary name was citroxane. And oh my goodness, it worked really, really well. And I could speak for an hour about how well that worked. But then the owner, Dr. Robert Ibsen, who has since passed away, I did a lot of work with them. He got to the age of his early 80s, and for some reason, he wasn't going to pass it down to his kids, and he started selling off the business piece by piece. So he sold off the whole Rembrandt line, which was tooth whitening, toothpaste, some other cosmetic types of things. He sold that off to Oral-B, which was at the time a Gillette company. So Oral-B then made some changes. They added a little bit more abrasive. Why, I don't know, but they did. Then the Federal Trade Commission forced Gillette to sell the company when Procter & Gamble was buying Gillette because they would have a monopoly. So they sold it to Johnson & Johnson. And it is now being manufactured by one of their subsidiaries. Problem is, the idiots over there added all this abrasive. Yes, they still have the papain, but now they have all this abrasive. So it's not only gone from almost no abrasive to low to medium, but now it's in the high abrasive arena. So I no longer recommend that. There is no toothpaste out there currently that I would recommend from that perspective, which is a shame. So right now, the toothpaste that I am recommending to patients and recommending to the thousands of dentist customers that we have is something called Pronamel. That's it's Pronamel. And it's made by the company that makes Sensodyne. So it has potassium nitrate in it, which is something that will reduce tooth sensitivity. But most of their versions, and I can't remember which ones are which, but most of their versions are in the very, very low abrasiveness arena. So what I would say is that if someone's using a toothpaste that they like, they could call the company and ask them how abrasive it is, what category it fits into. Because over time, a very abrasive toothpaste will cause damage to your teeth and to your gums. Now, as far as tobacco, on gum health, smoking cigarettes where you inhale, and if you're really a cigarette smoker, you're smoking multiple cigarettes a day. Well, because you're inhaling that into your lungs, it goes into your bloodstream, and it does have a negative effect on the health of the gums. So for instance, one of my chief areas of research starting in 1976, in fact, it was the first area I became very involved in, is gum disease. Gum disease is the most common disease known to mankind, and it can result in losing all of your teeth because it eats away the bone that holds the teeth in place. And so cigarette smoking has a negative effect on that. So whenever I would have a patient that would come in and need treatment of their gums, if they would not agree to stop smoking cigarettes, I'd tell them to go somewhere else, because I'm not going to do surgery on someone and cut tissue away and all that kind of thing if they're still smoking cigarettes, because it's going to continue. Now, cigar smoking obviously has, from a technical standpoint, the same effect, but it's so minimal. And in my opinion, from a practical standpoint, it's of no concern. So the bottom line is, if you're brushing your teeth properly, most importantly, if you're flossing and flossing properly, you're removing all the bacteria, and it's the bacteria that cause tooth decay, gum disease, all of that. So for someone who tends to get a lot of staining on their teeth, if I could still recommend Rembrandt toothpaste, you would never have a problem with staining again. But I'm not going to recommend it because of the abrasiveness. So my recommendation would be see your dentist more frequently for a cleaning. Well, we got.
You mentioned the effect when the stains start penetrating the inside, sort of the enamel of your teeth. How quickly would that occur? So at what point you see that shift from just an external effect of staining working its way towards the inside and affecting the enamel?
It's incredibly variable. It's different. It depends on what cigars you smoke, how often you smoke them, and just like you did. See what you're doing right now? You're holding the smoke in your mouth. With me, I take a puff, and so the longer the smoke's in your mouth, the more it's going to affect your teeth. All of these things have an effect, but then also, teeth are made of hydroxyapatite crystals, and how tightly packed those crystals are is different from individual to individual. It can also be different from area on the tooth. So for instance, near the edge, you may have very, very dense enamel, but as you get up near the gum line, it may become less dense, or the opposite. The more dense your enamel is, the less likely tobacco stain is to enter. And so there are certain individuals that pick up stain much more quickly than other individuals, having nothing to do with tobacco. So I'm sure there are people out there that could go have their teeth cleaned, and 1 week later they'll start seeing some stain on there. Other people, it might be 2 months before they start seeing anything. So again, it's extremely variable. I would also suggest that those of you who have that particular problem of picking up stain quickly from cigar smoking, ask your dentist about it. How frequently should I come in? Be prepared. Most dentists are going to say, you shouldn't be smoking cigars. You got to stop smoking cigars. Tell them, you know what? I'm going to keep doing it. Just tell me how often I need to come in. But they may have some helpful tips based on your particular situation.
And then obviously, besides having frequent cleaning, once you see like true stain effects, that's probably when a professional teeth whitening session would be called for, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Because here's what happens. Tooth whitening, again, I've been involved in creating a lot of the science, or not creating it, but understanding it, the science, probably more than anybody else on the planet. And I'll tell you there that tooth whitening works in a few different ways. Now, all genuine tooth whitening products are peroxide based. And so when you have hydrogen peroxide breaking down, and some whitening gels are carbamide peroxide, but the carbamide peroxide breaks down to hydrogen peroxide, so it is the hydrogen peroxide that works on your teeth. So when that breaks down, for any of you who've had any chemistry classes, if they haven't been advanced chemistry classes, you may immediately say, oh yeah, hydrogen peroxide breaks down to molecular oxygen and water. And that is true. It can break down in that direction, but it also breaks down a different pathway where you have hydroxyl radicals, per-hydroxyl radicals, superoxide radicals, oxygen ions, and hydrogen ions, by the way, are acid. But you have it break down in these methods. So now when you do whitening on teeth, these byproducts that I just mentioned will start to soak into the tooth. But the internal matrix of the tooth is plugged up with stain. So it can't just dive into your tooth. It has to start working from the outside in. And all of these ions and radicals will aggressively and microscopically bubble as it gets into the tooth. And that will break up these long chain stain molecules into tiny, tiny molecules. And the pressure will push that stain out of the tooth. So, and then now once that's happened, now it's not plugged at the surface, and now it continues going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the tooth structure, cleansing. So that cleanses the tooth internally, starts to regenerate it or rejuvenate it back to when the teeth first came in when you were a kid. Now, the other thing that happens is specifically the per-hydroxyl radical, that will attack what's called chromophore bonds within the stain molecules. Now, I like to think of molecules as just big magnets because you have the positive and the negative, etc. So a bunch of atoms are held together by magnetic forces to keep it as a molecule. Now, certain types of those forces are called chromophore bonds. And what they will do, they will absorb visible light. So when you have these chromophore bonds, light goes in, it's absorbed, and so it's not reflected back at your eye. So the teeth look darker. So the chromophore bonds, they are the enemy. So if we can break those chromophore bonds, now light will be reflected, so the tooth looks whiter. That's how it works. And so that's why the particular whitening system that I created is unchallenged as being by far the most effective in the world. In fact, I don't know how many of you listening are familiar with tetracycline staining of teeth. Tetracycline is an antibiotic that when taken at certain ages during tooth development, or for certain versions of in the tetracycline family, it can happen even later in life, but it will bond to those hydroxyapatite molecules, a chelation bond. And so it's an inorganic stain, very, very difficult to whiten. And until the system I developed, it was considered impossible to whiten tetracycline stained teeth, which can be as dark as a dark wood, dark brown wood. And lots of times it has bands going across. So the system that I've developed is extremely effective. When you put whitening trays in and you wear them at home, whitening trays made at the dentist, the whitening gel is only active for 20 to 35 minutes because the saliva gets in and destroys it. The antioxidant glutathione peroxidase will destroy it on contact. However, I created a certain type of whitening tray that seals the saliva out. And so they're worn at night. And because they're so precise, you really can barely even feel that you have them in your mouth. And you wake up in the morning not even realizing they're in your mouth. Because of that seal, the whitening occurs for 6+ hours instead of only 20 to 35 minutes. That's one of the reasons ours is so effective. By having such a continuously long period, it can keep whitening the tooth deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper continuously. Because once you stop, all of those bleaching factors that I mentioned, they come back out of the tooth. So the next night you have to start all over from scratch. So if you have a whitening system that's only active for 20 to 35 minutes at a time, it's not going to do a whole lot. But the point is that when you have these tobacco or any other stains that get into your mouth, if you have a good whitening system that works, it will start going in, breaking up those stains and pushing them back out. And any that it can't get out, it'll break the chromophore bonds. So I hope I didn't go too far over anybody's head on that, but that's how it works.
I think it's super interesting and great to hear those details. Now, final question on that. Would you say that once the stain level of your teeth goes beyond a certain point, does the effect become irreversible? Or would you say there's always something that could be done and always a positive effect that you could see coming off of this treatment?
Well, that's a very good question, because with all other systems out there, other than the system I created, you're right. Once it gets to a certain difficulty, something that we would call, for instance, as an example, dark geriatric staining. Someone who's in their 60s, 70s, 80s that has absorbed a lot of stain and their teeth are dark. I mean, how many times have you seen older individuals with really dark teeth? It's not uncommon at all. And none of the other whitening systems can even touch that, not even close. But with the core whitening, if you're able to sleep with those trays, and the normal regimen is every night for 2 weeks. But if you have an extremely difficult case, maybe it'll be every night for 3 weeks, every night for 4 weeks. With tetracycline staining, you're wearing the trays every night for 6 to 8 weeks. And what's funny is a lot of the dentists out there will ask that haven't used my system will say, well, Rod, you know, my patients don't like wearing those trays. They're not going to wear those trays for 8 weeks. Come on. And I said, well, yeah, your average patient, you're absolutely right. But we're talking about tetracycline stain patients. These are patients that for their entire life, at least from 7 years old on, have had horrible looking teeth, horrible, eye-catching. It looks like you just bit into a chocolate bar without swallowing. That's what it can look like. People like that, to wear the trays every night for 8 weeks and then go into the dental office for an actual in-office treatment to get their teeth white, that's nothing. That's nothing. They don't care. They would do that. They would wear it every night for a year and be happy about that. So, for the average person, typically when you have whitening done, and most people have experienced this or heard about it, you go to the dentist and they do whatever they're going to do. And if all they're doing is whitening in the dental office, you may see some whiteness when you're done. But about 2 days later, 3 days later, your teeth are getting back to the same shade. It reverses very quickly. If they're doing the mouth whitening, the at-home whitening, you may, after 2 weeks, say, yeah, my teeth are a little lighter. That's nice. But then a few weeks after that, you're right back to where you started. Whereas with the system that I created, it's permanent. So when you go through this, you are so intensely cleansing your teeth fully into the tooth structure, rejuvenating your teeth back to where they were when you were 10 years old. So they're clean inside. Well, now, if you wear those trays just one time a month, the rest of your life, you can smoke cigarettes, cigars, drink red wine, drink coffee, and 30 years later, your teeth are still going to be the same color. Yes, over a 1 month period, They may get a little bit darker, but then you wear those trays one more time. And this works because you initially cleansed the tooth structure so thoroughly that you're able to maintain it with just that very simple maintenance. So that's one of the reasons that our system has become considered the premier professional tooth whitening system in the world. And in fact, I had congenitally dark teeth, and no whitening system ever worked until I tried that. And it had a huge impact on me. But it's been a lot of fun. And one of the most difficult things for me professionally is back in 2010 when I had to give up my dental practice, because surprisingly, my company had exploded so much that I couldn't do both. So giving up dental practice 12 years ago was extremely difficult for me, because that's what I was made for. That's just the most perfect thing for me to do. But what's really great is that still all day, every day, I'm communicating with dentists throughout the country and many internationally, consulting with them about certain patients. And when we have these patients who, before they came in and had the treatment done, and a picture, they would have a photograph taken, they'd go and they'd say smile, they'd go without showing their teeth. And then afterwards, to go from a horrible appearance to a beautiful appearance, it changes people's lives. They become less introverted. It is such a great feeling. So I was very worried when I had to give up practice. It's like, oh my God, but I'm not going to be a dentist anymore. But it's still a lot of fun for me, because I'm still very involved. And still, I have lots of areas of research development that I'm doing.
Beautiful. Very interesting, Rod. Many thanks for sharing those insights, which I think are highly interesting for a lot of cigar smokers.
I think I mentioned to you, I think I mentioned to you that I've also been continuing my development on cigar accessories. But with the COVID thing, it has really gotten slowed down very much. But there are several new, very innovative products that solve problems that have never been addressed before, that I'm hopeful we'll finally be able to launch in the next 3, 6, 9 months, something like that. Because right now we still only have the 3. I've told you about a few of them. Obviously, it's not something we can make public. But still, we only have just the 3 products on our website. But I'm really looking forward to those other very innovative products being able to be launched coming up. So I've been busy with that too.
Great to hear. And I'm sure we can do a follow-up show once those products are on the market, so that we can tell people about the newest evolution of Perfect Cigar Solution. Well, Rod, that sort of leads me to my final questions. When you look at the cigar industry today, with everything that's going on, and you mentioned numerous times on the show today that even though you're not part of the cigar industry per se, you are, obviously. Now, looking at the bigger picture, what are certain things in the cigar world that you would like to change, or at least see change over the next couple of years? Where do you think the industry is headed?
Well, that's very difficult, because I love the industry. First of all, in the field of cigars themselves, I'm certainly not qualified to know any of that, but I'll tell you from the people that I've met in the industry and in the cigar manufacturing industry, some of them are absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. I can't imagine anyone doing a better job. Certainly, there's always progress going into the future. I think the cigar industry is doing a fabulous job. I mean, some of the big companies out there and some of the small companies out there, they're so committed. And here's one of the things, a pet peeve I have about industry in general, and I'll speak to the dental industry. I was, for years, because of my research, I've been a consultant to all of the major teeth whitening companies. And we're talking about companies that are subsidiaries of other companies that make billions and billions of dollars a year. And it really frustrated me when the only suggestions they would take from me are any suggestions I made that put money in their pocket. If it was just suggestions to make the system more effective, easier, whatever, they didn't want to hear about it, especially if it made it more costly for them to produce the products. And that made me furious. You know, progress should be all about making your products better. And so in the United States, at least, we have a saying about real estate. What are the three most important things about real estate? Location, location, location. Well, in the corporate industry, I kept thinking to myself, well, if you ask somebody in the corporate world in dentistry, what are the three most important things? They'd say profit, profit, and profit. Okay, if you want to have profit here, great, but make number two the quality of your products or something. And so when my wife talked me into opening the dental industry company, I'm a dentist, she's the business person. I said, okay, but you have to agree that we will never take a penny of investment money, because I don't want somebody telling me what I have to do to maintain profits. And if you want, profits can be number one, but doing the right thing and quality has also got to be number one. Profits cannot be above anything else. And so that's what I've seen. But I'll tell you, I don't get the same feeling in the cigar industry. You know, it's when I talk to people in the dental industry that are working in the dental industry, it's all about corporate America. It's all about making that profit. It's all about that type of stuff. I don't hear any of them really talking with passion about helping patients and, you know. But when I talk to people in the cigar industry, what's obviously first and foremost on their mind is the industry and cigar smokers and making the best of this and doing the best they can with. So I'm hard pressed to, and I'm certainly not knowledgeable enough to say where they should do better. I think they should be a model for every other industry in the world, is what I think. Certainly, I know things are going to get better from things I've heard. Cigar smoking is growing in popularity. I don't know if that's true or not. Certainly, I know that my company in the cigar industry is doing way better than I ever thought it would. You know, just opening it for fun, you know, not thinking we would ever financially benefit from it. But it's doing great. So maybe some other people would, you know, that are more knowledgeable could give you, you know, some suggestions, but not from here. I love what I see.
That's wonderful to hear. And we talk about this frequently on the show. And I think most of our guests will share your perspectives and the positivity that you mentioned. So I think we're in a good place. And one of the key takeaways, I think you're spot on. Doing the right thing is always the right thing. And you can never compromise that quality and your vision and the reason why you're doing things and sacrifice that for the short-term profit. So I think that's an incredible statement, very true for the cigar industry, and certainly the one thing to keep in mind and to always hold dear and close to our hearts.
Well, I'll tell you, given the philosophy you just gave to me, don't ever try and get a job in the dental industry because you won't fit in.
I think we're all in a good place here at the cigar industry. Aliki, you had
Absolutely.
a comment or a question.
I have both. Hello, Dr. Rodger.
Hello?
Hello from Egypt. I'm in Cairo now and looking forward to see you soon, or at least to see your product. I have a comment first. I want to congratulate you because I really respect men who mention their wives during their path, the working career and career progress and success. And I really appreciate it. You mentioned it more than twice, definitely. Twice I heard it. So I think there is a third time maybe. This is number one. Number two, you said that you are making new products, right? That will be
Yes.
released after 8 months or 9 months.
Hopefully
Maybe.
sooner. Hopefully sooner. But one of my big problems, well, when I'm sure you've heard this before, when someone says, tell me the best thing about you and tell me the worst thing about you.
Yeah.
Well, for me is the best thing about me is I am an extreme perfectionist. And the worst thing about me is that I'm an extreme perfectionist. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
And
okay, I
so,
understand.
so in developing a product, I'm not going to release it until it is to the most perfection that I am capable of. And otherwise, they would have all been launched by now. But you know, on some of them, I've gone through as many as 15 prototypes in trying to get there. So that's why it takes me a little bit longer. But I'm hopeful that I'll be able to start launching anywhere from 3 to 9 months from now. I'm sure I'll launch them one at a time as they become available. And as far as my wife goes, we
Excellent.
met back in 1980. And she was in the dental industry also. And we became friends. And then after about a year, we started dating. And when I found out what a wonderful brain she has, as well as the not so bad looks, but just the friendship that we were able to develop, she came out from New Jersey, which is on the East Coast, all the way out to California with me, and we got married. And she has run my dental practice the whole time. She's become as knowledgeable in dentistry as any dentist I've ever known. In fact, when we go to lectures, lots of times questions from the audience are for my wife. And everything, so we've worked together. We are together every minute of every day with very few exceptions, 7 days a week. And for some reason, it works for us. I have talents in certain areas. She has talents in other areas, and we complement each other. And we take each other's advice. So it's kind of, I think, maybe a unique marriage, but it's more than anything, it's about being partners and friends. So yeah, she's a part of absolutely everything I do.
Excellent. I'm proud of you. Tell me something, Dr. Kurthy. How many products will be released you are thinking of, or how many products you have? You will be have.
Some of the products have more than one version. So let's see. There will be three main areas, but in all, there will probably be about 6 or 7 different products.
Can you tell us one? Only one.
Okay.
That you never tell anybody. Only in this platform. We will be the
Okay.
first platform.
But we always have hard guests and hard questions, you know. So
Okay. So
If you want, I won't
so-
push you. If you
so
want.
so all but one of them have already received patents in the United States, in China, in the UK, and in Europe. So I'll show you this one here, because someone else talked about this on the internet, because I've had a beta test, and this is not the final version, but I personally like cigar punches because, well, here, like this one here. The fact that this wrapper popped off, that was before I even punched it. But if you look, if you can see at all how very, very laser-like that cut is and how large. I like the fact that I have a little rounded corner here. It just feels better against my lips. So I almost never cut my cigars, and it's always been like that. But cigar punches have historically been so very small.
Yes.
Also, cigar punches the blades have been thick. Also, the sharpening bevel has been mainly on the outside, but also a little bit on the inside.
Right.
So when you insert it, you have this thick blade going in. Most of them have not been very sharp, and you have a bevel. So the cut occurs at the edge. So as you slide it in up the bevel, it pushes outward, can tend to break the cap. So this little instrument here, which, as you can see, is a cigar stand. I like cigar stands. I'm not using it right now because I'm the only one smoking. I have my ashtray here. But when I'm with friends, I hate reaching over and laying my cigar there and talking. I prefer to have something in front of me. Also, as a dental researcher, I know what the maximum size needed, because over a certain size, we can't breathe, we can't suck in anymore. So there's a certain maximum size. So after studying all the sizes of cigars, we go from an 8mm to a 14mm. Now, if you're familiar with chef's knives, European and USA chef's knives are beveled 20 degrees on average on each side. So you have a 40-degree edge. For anyone who's familiar with a Japanese sushi knife, it's flat on one side with an 18 to 20-degree bevel. So instead of a 40-degree edge, you have only an 18 to 20-degree edge. So with this, the bevel is only on the inside. And so it's like a sushi knife, but also because the bevel's on the inside, there's no outward pushing as you insert it. So there's no tendency to break the cap. The metal is a 440C stainless steel, which is in general considered to be the benchmark metal for blades. And it's the metal that other metals compare themselves to when talking about blades. And they can be heat hardened. Now, the hardest that 440 can be hardened is to a Rockwell hardness of 60, which is a theoretical hardness, very, very hard to achieve. For instance, the best cigar punch out there on the market from a very huge company, wonderful accessory company, their blades, they've gotten up to a 57 Rockwell hardness. We've gotten ours up to a 60. And to confirm that, I had them tested at a metal testing laboratory in Huntington Beach here in Southern California. And so we've gotten up to a 60. And what that means is The harder it is, the longer it will maintain the sharpness. However, the harder it is, the more costly it is to manufacture, to grind the bevels.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, the thickness of the blade. The standard punch blade is about 0.025 to 0.03 inches in thickness.
Mhm.
These are 0.0085. So a small
Okay.
fraction. If you took 2 sheets of standard copy paper and you compressed them together, that's the thickness of these blades. So they're ultra, ultra thin. So they will maintain the sharpness pretty much indefinitely. They're ultra thin, which means they glide into the cigar easier. The bevels on the inside, they're only at an 18 to 20 degree bevel or edge as compared to a 40 degree edge. And so when you close it, these little fingers push the cap out. And the
Very
final
nice.
version will have a rare earth magnet here that holds it together. So if you're carrying it in your pocket, there's no chance it will open up.
Okay.
And we've done beta tests on this, and everyone has gone crazy over it. And so this is actually from the beta test, and I've made some improvements since this one here. So that's one of them, because I think that many people don't use punches because of the problems of common punches. And for me, if you like the idea of having a smoother shoulder here for more comfort, and also being able to use as large of a size as will fit the cigar, because if your punch is too small, that starts to restrict the draw. So anyway, I'm very excited about this. This is all I use, other than when I have a tapered cigar and I cut the tip. So this is one of them. So you've heard things that no one else has heard so far.
Many
Congratulations.
Bravo. Many thanks for sharing. And I very much look forward to seeing more of your ingenuity hitting the market and bringing value to the cigar industry. What a tremendous show, Rod. Thank you so much for coming on today. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your experience with all people watching. It's been an absolute pleasure and joy to have you at the Light 'em Up Lounge, and I very much look forward to welcoming you again and hearing about some more exciting stuff that we will see from Perfect Cigar Solution. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. This has been great. Thanks to everyone watching. I love you guys because I love everybody in the cigar industry, because you're all great people.
Thank you.
Rod, thank you from heart. It's greatly appreciated. All the very best to you. Our blessings to the entire family, and I can't wait to welcome you back here at the Light 'em Up Lounge, and to hopefully much sooner than later see you for a cigar in person, sit down with you, share a great beverage, share a great cigar, and many more exciting stories.
I would love that.
It's wonderful to have you at Light 'em Up Lounge, and we'll see each other again very, very soon. Dr. Rodger Kurthy, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
we'll see you all again here at the Light 'em Up Lounge next week. Until then, be safe,
Bye-bye.
well, and light 'em up. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.